All right, we are recording. You know what? I do believe this is episode 40. Nice round number, episode 40. And we're going to be starting on page 60. Page 60. Actually, no, yes, I think let's start on page 59. For the first time, I think since we started doing this, we actually did not finish um, this one of these little sections. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll read the whole emptying the mind, filling the heart section, but the only part that we didn't finish is right at the top of page 60. But just so we have it in context, we'll read the whole thing, but we're not going to spend any time on it except for that last paragraph. And before I jump into that, is there anything that anybody wants to bring up from last week? Anything still unprocessed? Only partially masticated. Oh, don't you love that one? Yeah, I knew I'd get that reaction, Judy. Anything that you wanted to bring up? All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's read this. Let's take a look at that last paragraph that we didn't have time for last week, and then we'll jump into the new section, the shedding of thoughts. He says to keep the mind space open, you need some form of meditative practice, something much more than saying prayers. In fact, if recitation of prayer does not lead to a change in consciousness, it is actually counterproductive. We spent a lot of time on that last week talking about prayer of the heart. Authentic prayer is invariably a matter of both emptying the mind and filling the heart, and often one follows the other. To do that, you normally have to move beyond recited, formulaic, and social prayers to bring the mind down into the heart or the heart up into the mind. Either way works. The early Desert Fathers and Mothers spoke of the prayer of quiet, which, once learned, allows you to pray all the time. To keep the heart space open, you almost always need emotional healing in regard to past hurts. The heart space is most commonly opened by grief, music, conscious empathy, art, dance, nature, fasting, poetry, other honoring sexuality, and the entire art and suffering of relationship itself. We actually didn't talk too much about that sentence either, but I think we kind of hit around the edges of it. All of these activities that he's talking about in this last sentence have to do with activities that are intuitive, that are not word-based. And that was something that we really spent a lot of time on last Wednesday, was whether our prayers are word-based or not. Because if they're word-based, then we're still living inside our egoic minds. We're still primarily processing with the intellectual, and we're not moving into contemplative space. But look at all of these: grief, music, conscious empathy, art, dance, nature, fasting, poetry, and other honoring sexuality. All of those are pure presence. That's why we love them. Well, we don't love grief, but music and art and dance and nature, all of those are going to be hitting us at the deeper level, and they bypass the intellect, bypass the egoic thought. That's why they take us into that heart space that he's talking about.
What
And
what is
go ahead.
what is other honoring sexuality?
What is it?
What is other honoring
Other
sexuality?
honoring would be, I suppose, non-cavalier, non-gratuitous. It would be, true intimacy expressed in physical terms. But it would need to be real intimacy and and not just sex for sex sake. I think that's what he's probably trying to say. That makes sense? Hi, Lindy. Good to see you. Lindy dropped in. Been a long
Can
time.
you tell me? Hi, I don't know what page you're on.
Page 59.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, jump right in. Yeah, so any comments on any of those activities? He says the heart space is most commonly opened up by these activities. And again, they bypass the intellect. They bypass words. So they're taking us to a very different place. Okay, next page. Your heart needs to be broken and broken open at least once to discover what your heart means and to have a heart for others. I find almost no exceptions to that. Okay. So I know we really don't want to hear that so much, right? And remember that last week, Brady asked, what is a definition of heart? What are we talking about when we talk about heart? And we read from Henry Nouwen to try to fill out this idea of hesychastic prayer, prayer of the heart, as opposed to prayer of the mind. This would be the same kind of the prayer that's hitting us in exactly the same way that art and music and dance and nature does. It's bypassing the intellect, and it's just presence to presence and heart to heart. But what he talks about there is what we're meaning by heart is the full biblical meaning of heart, which is the source of all physical, emotional, intellectual, volitional, and moral energies, is the way he put it. I would say probably it's the place from which we choose. The place from which we choose, because our choices aren't always rational, are they? In fact, a lot of our choices come directly out of the unconscious, directly out of the heart. That center that is really beneath or transcending the intellect is really what's driving the bus. We like to think that our minds are in control, but the truth of the matter is it's really the unconscious, the core beliefs, the programming that's down there that really is creating our thought and behavior patterns. So you have the unconscious that's creating the thoughts that we think we're in control of, but really they're being controlled. And so the heart is the center for all that activity. Now he's saying that heart needs to be broken and broken open at least once to discover what your heart means and to have a heart for others. And this is something that we're talking about all the time. You know, we need to be able to get all of that unconscious programming up to the surface where we can see what is really at issue and then be able to let go of what's limiting and, of course, affirm, honor, and own all the rest of it. But until the heart's broken, until we hit that place of great love or great suffering, we can stay really within our illusions, our egoic illusions, and the heart's just motoring on down in the unconscious, and we're not really even aware of its activity down there. But for the heart to be broken and opened up, that changes everything. And he finds almost no exceptions to that.
Dave, do you think it's even possible for any of us that are on this to not have had their heart broken at this point in our lives?
I think it's pretty rare. But here's the difference. We probably all have experienced heartbreak, but have we let that heartbreak break us? That's going to be the question. It's like we were talking about when we were talking about rites of passage, you know, the middle part, the liminal part, the transition. You got the separation from the world you knew, you move into a difficult transition, and then you are reincorporated back into community on the other side. Well, the transition is going to be difficult and disorienting, even traumatic, because of the nature of the event and the circumstances that you're in. But are you letting that transition actually take you into liminality? Are you allowing that transition to actually teach you what it means to be on the threshold between no longer and not yet? The world that is no longer and the world that is not yet, between ideas and concepts and beliefs. And I think the same thing is true here. We've had heartbreak, and it was a difficult transition. Every heartbreak is going to represent another rite of passage, right? The separation from everything we knew or the relationship that we had, and then a transition into some sort of reincorporation, if we ever do really reincorporate. But did we let that heartbreak do this kind of work for us? Did it open us up? Or did we fight it? Did we blame somebody else for it? Did we just add to our list of resentments? Or did we actually grow and become deeper and more compassionate as a result?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this?
Hi, Kathy.
Oh, Kathy's here. So anyone disagree? Do you think you can do this without having to have your heart broken wide open?
Mhm.
No, isn't
I
it a
think this is
Dave, isn't
very
it a process?
similar to a bottom. What I'm hearing this as is what we would, at least I would typically refer to as hitting a bottom.
Okay. Mhm. And were you saying something too, Bill?
Yeah, I was just saying, it seems like it's as I reflect on my life experience, it's an ongoing cycle that I go through. I'm mindful of paying attention to what God may be trying to show me through hard knocks that happen throughout life. And there's times when you feel like you're at the absolute bottom and then you kind of cycle back out of it. But it is a cycle that for me seems like it just is ongoing through life, and that I've got to keep asking myself, am I being open to learn what I think God is trying to, what I'm able to learn through it, and what He gives me strength to persevere through.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a waste of life if you don't. And it's kind of like, you can, shove things under the rug, but you get to a point in your life, it's like those things just never go away. They have to be dealt with, and you can either deny them and grow, or you don't. And they don't go away. You keep coming after you until you're willing to let God shape and break, like I think He's referring to.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we're certainly not done getting our hearts broken, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Every time that you allow yourself to love something or someone, doesn't matter what it is, you allow your heart back out on your sleeve, you allow yourself to become vulnerable, it is guaranteed you're going to get it broken. I mean, that's just what happens. Everything is transitory here. Everything is temporary here. And so anything we love is subject to change at any given moment. So, but what's the alternative? Not ever loving anything to keep our hearts safe?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a fate worse than death. So it's guaranteed we're going to get our heart broken. You all know the difference. You talk to someone who's had their heart broken and they're angry and they're bitter and they're blaming this and that and whatever. Well, they're learning nothing from the experience.
Mhm.
They're just redefending themselves harder, and nothing really is taking place. And so what we're trying to do is to make friends with the pattern that we have to become vulnerable and hurtable, heartbreakable in order to be connected. And that connection is the reason that we're here. It's our whole
Mhm.
purpose as human beings. And the price of admission to that purpose and that connection is heartbreak. So once we know that they go hand in hand with each other, even though it's never fun and it's always painful, we understand the process now, and we can enter into it, and we can realize on the other side of this heartbreak is more expansiveness, a deeper awareness, more compassion, more ability to connect. And
I,
so we can become willing to go through it. Lindy?
I'm just sitting here marveling because this conversation, I haven't been with you guys in a long time. And I did buy this book and I haven't gotten to page 59 yet. But I was just upstairs sharing a song that I'd written. And you guys are touching on all these things that just came through this song. And the song is called It's Not a Wasted Life. You just brought up it's a waste of life if you don't learn this. And my song is kind of based on the trauma of my son having a brain injury after he had a very bad accident. And some people might think, what a wasted life. So the song is about it's not a wasted life. But in the bridge, I just have to share this lyric with you because I didn't know. I mean, it's just God revealing in my own life what I think what contemplative practice does reveal and show you. But the lyric is, and though your heart will break, there's a difference you can make. When it's broken, it can open, puts compassion into motion. And life comes from the wound, and through the pain flows something new. With tears, we see a little clearer. Into the hurting, we draw nearer. And I think that is so apropos to this little paragraph on page 60.
I don't think you could have said it any better than that. That's
That's
amazing.
great, Lindy.
That's
Wow.
beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's a meaningful lesson in my own life that helps me process the heartbreak of what happened to Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the basic lesson that Jesus is trying to teach us. This is the basic lesson of the cross. I mean, what is a cross but the ultimate expression of vulnerability, willingness to be hurt for the sake of connection and the sake of relationship. And so Jesus' whole life is reflecting this, and that is his way. So it's all tied up here, and it comes to the point right here. If we're not willing to be heartbroken, then we're pretty much stalled out on the way of Jesus. We're not going any further. That's just part of it. Pick up your cross daily, deny yourself, follow me. Lose your life if you want to save it. I mean, all of these expressions that we keep coming back to just take on greater and greater importance and meaning in the context of what we're talking about here.
There's that Japanese art form called kintsugi, and I mentioned this before. So it's like the broken pieces of pottery. It's a broken heart. It's how you put it back together. So if you put it back together, it could be damaged goods and it's damaged, or you put it back, and so that pottery piece, in the art of kintsugi, you put it back in pieces, and the glue is like this powdered lacquer of gold, and it's just beautiful. And what they say too is sometimes people on purpose will break their pottery just so to have that effect. So it's like you come out even more beautiful. It depends on whether you have resentment and anger, like you said, or you come out being better.
Well, the good news in life is we don't have to break our own pots. Life is going to do it for us. Yeah. No
Yeah.
self-flagellating here. Life is going to do it for us. So we can count on that. It's going to happen. It all depends on how we approach, how we partner with what happens as to whether it's going to take us where we really want to go or not. And that comes under the heading of accepting life on life's terms, accepting the way this does work, making friends with it, even though it's painful, and realizing, yeah, that's the price of admission. But it's good to know that it does take us someplace that we do want to go, even though it's difficult in the moment. All right, let's continue on. The shedding of thoughts. Right on page 60. I'll read through it and then we'll come back. Contemplation is a panoramic receptive awareness whereby we take in all that the situation, the moment, the person offers without judging, eliminating, or labeling anything. It is pure and positive gazing that abandons all negative pushback so it can recognize inherent dignity. That takes much practice and a lot of unlearning of habitual responses. We have to work at it and develop practices whereby we recognize our compulsive and repetitive patterns and allow ourselves to be freed from the need to take control of the situation, as if we ever really could anyway. It seems we are addicted to our need to make distinctions and judgments, which we mistake for thinking. Most of us think we are our thinking, yet almost all thinking is compulsive, repetitive, and habitual. We are forever writing our inner commentaries on everything, commentaries that always reach the same practice conclusions. That is why all forms of meditation and contemplation teach a way of quieting this compulsively driven and unconsciously programmed mind. The Desert Fathers and Mothers wisely called this process the shedding of thoughts. We don't fight, repress, deny, identify with, or even judge them, but merely shed them. We are so much more than our thoughts about things, and we will feel this more as an unlearning rather than a learning of any new content. Sorry about kind of keep hitting the cough button. Any thoughts about this or initial takeaways? All right, then. Let's go back and let's start picking it apart a little bit. Contemplation is a panoramic, receptive awareness whereby we take in all that the situation, the moment, the person offers without judging, eliminating, or labeling anything. It's pure and positive gazing that abandons all negative pushback so it can recognize inherent dignity. That takes much practice and a lot of unlearning of habitual responses. I don't know if you remember that last week when we were talking about emptying the mind and filling the heart. I pushed back a little bit on emptying the mind, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood that we aren't actively emptying the mind. We're not trying to evacuate everything that's in there, and we're not expecting our heads to be silent. We're not expecting the inside of our minds to be completely silent, because that doesn't really happen. What we talked about is it's more of a displacement. It's like putting the ship in the water and it displaces its weight in water. We enter or introduce the sacred word and it displaces all those thoughts. We come back to our breath and it displaces all those thoughts. We re-enter the conversation, look right in the person's eyes, hear what they're saying, and it displaces everything else. Whatever we immerse in completely in the moment displaces all of that activity. When we listen to music, art, watch, dance, or engage in those activities, it has that ability to displace everything. And so it's that displacement that we're really after, not an active pushing out or trying to wish away. Because as soon as we do that, we're focusing on it. We're giving it energy. We are actually, even though it's negative energy, we're still giving it energy. And that constitutes a thought. All of our focus coming to a point is what we define as a thought. Well, this paragraph, I think, does a great job of expressing what I was trying to express when I was pushing back against emptying the mind, you know. And I know he was using the phrase, but he didn't mean it the way that I was trying to push back against, because I know Richard Rohr understands this because he's expressed it so many times. But this idea of a panoramic receptive awareness. Good words, panoramic. You know, it's the whole panorama of everything. We're hyper aware of everything that's going on, whether it's coming through our senses from the outside, you know, air temperature, the pressure of the seat underneath you, dogs barking in the background, birds chirping, smell of coffee as you're sitting in your early morning quiet time. All of that is present. And then all the interior activity, your thoughts, emotions, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So all of that is there and you're present and you're hyper aware. You have the whole panorama of all the sensory input and all the mental input. You're receptive. You're not trying to judge it. You're not judging it good or bad, but you're also choosing not to think about it. That really is the key. You're not forming words around it. You're not forming images around it. You're just letting it be. That image of the debris floating down the river, you just let it go. You see it, you notice it, but you don't grab onto it. You just let it go. So it's this panoramic receptive awareness whereby we take in all that the situation, the moment, and the person offers. All of it's there without judging, eliminating, or labeling anything. One of an image that stuck with me is a woman who was writing about sensory walks. She was talking, how do you have a sensory walk? You know, we go on walks around the neighborhood or wherever we go, but if you're going to have a sensory walk, you're hyper aware of everything that you are sensing through all your five senses for everything. But what you don't do is name them. Oh, that's a sycamore tree. No, it's not a sycamore tree. You don't form the word. You just see the shape of the green against the blue sky. You're noticing everything, but you're not naming it. You're not putting it into words. That's the labeling part. You don't label it, you don't judge it, and you don't try to wish it away. You give it absolutely no energy whatsoever. You just are present in the midst of all of that. He says it is pure and positive gazing, pure and positive gazing, just noticing, right? That abandons all negative pushback so it can recognize inherent dignity. You're just part of it. In another book, he says everything belongs. Everything belongs in your moment with you, right? So you're just noticing it and you're not pushing back against it. And yeah, it does take a lot of practice because we are so practiced at judging, comparing, and contrasting everything. And that's the problem. That's what all our minds do anyway, is compare and contrast and judge. And so trying to step away from that, displace that, so that we can just notice things is definitely a practiced thing that we can do. Thoughts about that?
Okay.
All right. Now we're recording again. Man. So for any of those who are trying to watch this archive, what just happened here is we totally lost connectivity and we started the recording again. And so do the best you can to read across the gap there. Okay, we're still on page 60. We're still in the first paragraph, but we are kind of moving on to the second paragraph. So I don't know. I think, Bill, the last thing that before everything went to pot there, you were saying that this was a very different part of your brain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
And
a
what
part
did
of my
you, what
brain
did you
that's
mean by that?
what I mean is that it's part of my brain that really has a hard time grasping what this is. I can relate to it if I'm sitting down and dedicating myself to contemplation for 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. But outside of that, it's really difficult to grasp how you do this other than in that kind of context. It's just I guess it's the left side of my brain that's kind of dominant. My right side that's more creative maybe is just not quite so able to grasp some of this.
So you're saying that it's hard to grasp when we're talking about it.
Just how it, I guess how it, the practical side of me is how I apply it in the 23 and a half hours that I'm not contemplating.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but it's the same way. You know, whatever it is that you're doing, name an activity that you do during the day.
Well, any task that I'm doing, I'm managing a contractor right now, trying to arrange things, and I'm all focused on that. I'm not multitasking. I'm just totally absorbed in that, and just wherever I'm at, be all there, kind of like.
Yeah, that's basically it. The thing is that there's some tasks that you do that require you to be thinking rationally. You have to be thinking in figures and words, and or you're speaking with that subcontractor, and you have to use words in order to do that. So you can be totally immersed in it, but you're still using the rational brain. Other things that you do, like if you're just taking Bodhi for a walk, you don't have to think about that at all. You can be completely and wordlessly absorbed in what you're doing and be in a very contemplative state, even though you're moving and doing whatever it is you do. And that's why art and music and dance and those things are so precious to us, because they allow us wordlessly to engage fully. We don't have to use that part of our brain. It hits us at that lower level or higher level. But that's what we want to do. When we are engaging in contemplative prayer, we are practicing like a musician in a practice room, not so we can perform in the practice room, but that we get those scales and all of that into our muscle memory so deep that when we go on stage, it's there for us and we don't have to think about it. We don't have to, we just call it up. We do what we do. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to practice the technique of mindfulness, of presence, of choiceless awareness well enough that it'll be there for us during the day when the pressure is on, when different things are calling at the same time, or we're getting triggered emotionally, and we can still be able to go back to that centered place. That's the whole point of this, is so that we can have as much of a seamless experience, what Paul calls continual prayer, as possible during our days. That's what this is all about.
It seems like the opposite of the paragraph that starts with, it seems we are addicted to our need to make distinctions and judgments, which we mistake for thinking. So, Bill, if I build websites on the side, okay, so same thing, you've got contracts you're working on, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in the middle of building a website, I have to be completely focused on that, right? If I one wrong move and I've destroyed a website, so I have to be all in. I get what you're saying, But then when I skip down to it seems we're addicted to our need to make distinctions and judgments. That's what I don't want. And that can happen sometimes even while I'm building a website. My mind can start wandering. My hand will stop moving the mouse. I'm not focused on the task anymore. My mind is off making distinctions and judgments right there in the middle of the task.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely guilty of that a
And
lot.
that's great, Ken, but now put it into context. That comes right after the sentence above it, that we are freed from the need to take control of the situation as if we ever really could anyway. What we're addicted to is control. What we're
Yeah.
addicted to is power. We want to be able to control the uncertainties of life. We want to be able to power through the unknowns of life. And that's what we're addicted to. And so we need all these judgments and distinctions and comparisons and contrasting that our minds do as this attempt at control, as this illusion of control. That's what we're addicted to. But we think it's thinking, but really it's that compulsion because we're afraid of the fragility of life or whatever it may be.
I'm reading. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say I'm reading Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr with the 12 steps, and it talks about with the acceptance with um just accepting. He says, that we it's that that our will to power to control our life rather than accepting life on life's terms is like so we're so anti-survival and it isn't until like our we increase our we decrease like we let go of our expectations and we increase our acceptance, and that's like directly proportionate to our serenity. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm right in the middle of this. I know time's scarce, but literally this happened to me, this addiction to judging and labeling and projecting. I have a California, ironically, customer insurance agent who finally got around to looking at his website. I sent him a demo, right? And it took him a week to look at it. So he looked at it and he emailed me back something that essentially hinted strongly enough that it is what's going to happen. He has some complaints about it. I mean, some things he doesn't like. Now he dumps that on me at the end of the business day today, and then he wants to talk tomorrow morning. So what does my brain want to do? My brain wants to grab onto this like a dog with a bone and think it to death. Well, if he says this, then I'm going to say that. But if he says that, then I'm going to say this. And I could play out hours of conversation in my head on something like that. And there's nothing to be done right now. I don't need to give it any thought, but I will give it a lot of thought. You know what I mean? I need to just hear him tomorrow and hear what he has to say and not think about it until then, because there's no point in obsessing about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the perfect example, Ken, because that's exactly what he's talking about. All of the thinking that you want to do and instinctively are being led to do is an attempt at control. You want to be able to control the situation. You want to control the conversation tomorrow. And so you're going to plan for every contingency. But of course, you can't plan for every contingency, right? No battle plan survives contact with the enemy, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And so all of that effort is wasted effort because you can't possibly do it. But that's what he says here in the next line. Most of us think we are our thinking, yet almost all thinking is compulsive, repetitive, and habitual. So what is he saying there? Basically, we think we're in control of our thoughts. But really what's in control of our thoughts is from the unconscious, and it's just regurgitating all of this compulsive and repetitive patterns that just go round and round and round. And we're not really in control. We're just regurgitating all that
what I'm struggling with a little bit here, and I hear it with what Ken is saying and what I'm feeling is like if I think of you in the middle of playing music on a Sunday morning, you're very engaged in how that music is all coming together, and if somebody makes the wrong note, you just keep going through it. It's just your muscle memory, and in a sense, I've shared this before, as an architect, my art, in a sense, is bringing all these disparate variables together into a form, a creative expression, a result that's tangible. And just like Ken is thinking about, all the different iterations that his client is throwing at him, for him to be prepared in his art, he needs to be able to give some guidance or give a sane consideration to that client. There's an art in how he handles that, as opposed to not being open to new ideas that the guy may be pulling and throwing at him. If he's just a one-track mind about the way it has to be, then he's being overly controlling. But if he's stepping back and saying, and Ken, I'm doing the same thing, as I have a subcontractor comes at me with different ideas than what I thought it should play out as, I need to be open. I want to be open to those new ideas. And that, in a sense, is being present to what is unfolding in front of me. And I'm taking those skills that I have and taking those into account and applying them so that there's a good outcome, as opposed to looking at it as a negative.
Right.
I'm trying to jam something that isn't wanting to be jammed. There's a different avenue to go down that, as an artist, you can flow with it a little bit, as opposed to hanging on to your, premonition. Much like you do as a musician or as a painter would do, there's an art in, I guess, how we apply our trade, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of where I struggle with this. It seems too elemental to say that my thinking is always my negative way of trying to control outcomes, when my art is about shaping something towards an outcome.
Bill, I think the difference is, at least for me, I'll just speak for me, is I totally agree with you. So when I'm listening to my client, Eddie, tomorrow, I need to be free and open and use my artistic mind, was it right side of my brain, right? To hear what he has to say and let all my skills and training work with the situation. So I'm not at that point thinking even in words, because I'm going to use words to talk to him, right? Is not bad at all. What's bad for me, and I started doing it before this meeting tonight, is obsessing about what if he says this, what if he says that, what am I going to say, and how dare he have any questions about my beautiful website. Of course, let's just be honest, that was there, and and I tend to ruminate. So rumination is what I do a lot, and practicing contemplation gives my mind, at least for 20 minutes a day, some rest from rumination, which hopefully is going to be practiced for ruminating less, like tonight. So I'm not going to ruminate tonight about Eddie and what he might say tomorrow about the website. Just going to let it be, because ruminating is just going to make me a prisoner of my own thoughts.
That's true, but you probably don't have control of that if you wake up in the middle of the night. I'm just sharing from my own experience.
You're right.
I will wake up if the pressure's on in the morning, like what you have ahead of you. I will wake. I can't put it in a box, and so what I've learned to do is to let go and, in a sense, wrestle through all those things with God. And pretty soon, I get to a point like I feel like Jacob, where my hip is out of joint.
Yeah.
But I'm allowing myself to, okay, just think through it, and pretty soon I'm asleep again.
Yeah.
So I don't fight it, but every night I make sure I'm sorry, this is going to be more, I'll keep this tame. Nature calls in the middle of the night. And if I have pressure in the next morning of something with work, I have to make conscious decision to gut it out and not get up, because as soon as I get up, my mind is moving into the next day.
Yeah.
Keeping that twilight. If I don't, then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to catch up on sleep the next night. But I can't control it. And so, in a sense, I'm staying in that liminal edge and allowing it to shape my thoughts so that in the morning, if I'm exhausted, I'm at least prepared with all these different iterations, and I've eliminated things that I thought were really that important, and I'm ready in the morning. I hate it, but that's kind of the way it is.
So I have a sister who she's younger than I am, but she's very logical and a critical thinker more than I am. And so she's trained as a lawyer. So sometimes I talk to her and I say, da, 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 but what if, and da, da. She says, that's all speculation. I don't waste my brain cells on that. So that's the end of my argument. That's the end of my rumination. So I hear myself saying that to myself too. This is all speculation. It's a waste of time. So I'm learning to have that attitude as well. Yeah. It's very helpful.
One of my favorite thoughts, or I forgot where I heard this from, but the idea is that the mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master.
Yes.
And, like I think when I think of Ken's share, I was thinking like that's not, like I don't think of that as the mind wandering we're talking about here. Like that is productive, like that is preparing for the meeting.
Right.
Right. And it's part of, like I think Bill was saying, it belongs, right? Like if you're gonna do something and sell it to someone, or you know what I mean, you have to, people who do good work spend time stressing about it and thinking about it and so on and so forth. And hopefully it's not just worry, right, where you're caught up in it, but you're thinking, contemplating the ifs, right? And you can be totally present to that, like as the thoughts come and go.
But I get caught up in it. So
yeah.
I master.
But how about the other way where, okay, he'll talk to you tomorrow. You guys talk to each other tomorrow. Why not just listen to what he says? These are my points, A, B, C, D. And then rather than answering back already, but just say, all right, give me 24 hours or I'll get back to you. That's when you think of what to say and what are your plans. You know what I mean?
I agree with that, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with being prepared, right?
I agree.
Ahead of time thinking.
I agree because I make contingency plan ABC. If ABC doesn't work, I say, okay, that's it then. I give it to you, Lord. I surrender. But I have to do ABC first.
Prepare for. So ruminating does me no good. It was just this vague, I've got complaints and I'll tell you tomorrow.
Not much to go on, Ken.
No, it wasn't.
So I think here's the thing. Obviously, it's a both and, it's not an either or. It's always that. We're talking about thoughts in the negative sense when they are actually more compulsions than they are thoughts. We're not saying that, Bill, to the exclusion of everything else, because obviously we have to prepare. We have to be able to think creatively, abstractly, and unconstrainedly, which is what our abstract thinking is all about. We go up into that land and we can be unconstrained. We can imagine things and we can go places that we cannot go practically, which allows us then to take the next practical leap that we need to take. I spend hours preparing for each Sunday morning message, right? But when Sunday morning comes and I finish marking up my notes and I put them in the little portfolio, I don't think about it anymore. I think about the drive too. I think about greeting Crazy John when I get there. I think about setting up and turning on the 70 switches or so it takes to get that church up and running. I think about rehearsing the band. And then when I sit down with the notes in front of me, then I start delivering the message. And if I have to think too hard on the message as I'm delivering it, I won't do a good job. I need to get back into a flow. And so it's being present to each part of the task as you're present to it. So whatever when you plan the work and then work the plan, so you plan the work. But once it's planned and there's nothing else you can do about it, now we're just ruminating and there is nothing more, or worrying, and there's nothing more good we can do. That is a place where we need to train ourselves to step away. displace, when there's nothing more we can do, and now we're just chewing up time and brain cells, that is how we can kind of see where the difference is. Are the thoughts productive or not? Is there something that we can actually control and control now? Then we should be doing it. If not, then come back to the present moment and let it go by displacement. So that is the discernment that we're all going to have to make as we go through, because let's be honest, if you really analyzed most of what passes for thought during our waking day, it's mostly going to be repetitive and habitual and compulsive. That's really where we spend a lot of our time, and maybe most of our time. So we need to be able to recognize that when it's happening and then come back to the present moment. And our practice that we do contemplatively, informal contemplative practice, is what's training us to be able to do that on the fly during the day when we suddenly become aware, oh, my mind has wandered and it's no place good. You know, I need to come back. But if it is something that we do need to do, then great. You know, I have this little decision tree that I do when I realize that my mind has wandered off and I'm obsessing about something. And the first thought is this something that I have any control over? If the answer is no, then I need to step away from it and come back to the moment. If the answer is yes, I do have some control over this, then the next question is, can I do anything about it now? And if the answer is no, then maybe I make a note of it, put it in the day planner so that I'm responsible and I'll get to it when I can get to it. But then I come back to the present moment, you know. And if the answer is yes, it's something I can control, and yes, I can do something about it now, then I should excuse myself from what I'm doing and go do it, and then come back to the present moment. But that little decision tree can help us to maybe make a decision about, is this something that we really need to be thinking about now, or is it just distracting us from the presence of the moment? And then that we can start to make those distinctions. But yes, it's always going to be a both and. You know, our ability to think abstractly is what separates us from the animals. And it's a part of us that is created in God's image, I believe, because it's the part of us that can actually choose. And so that's important for us to be able to exercise that, just not 24/7, right? Let's get a little balance here. Okay. We are going to have to stop there. We didn't finish another section twice in a row, but this is technical difficulties. I'm going to chalk it up to that. So I have something to blame other than myself, of course, because, you know, I'm not ready to be fully vulnerable on this. Good discussion. I'm sorry for all of the craziness, but I think we still got someplace tonight, and that's good. Bill, keep bringing this stuff up. And William and whomever, you know, be the devil's advocate here, because when you bring up these objections, it really helps us to talk through them, get some more perspective, and maybe get clear what it is we're trying to do here. Contemplative practice by its very nature is paradoxical, okay? It is not going to be resolved rationally. And so we're always in that liminal in-between state. That is exactly where we want to be, but it's going to cause some disturbance, all right? And so we're going to try to talk through, remove as much of the roadblocks to us being able to fully throw ourselves into this as possible, but we're not going to get them all. Otherwise, it wouldn't be paradoxical anymore, and it wouldn't be valuable. So there you go. All right. Scott.
Hi.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Lindy, were you saying something, Lindy?
Was there one thing? Go ahead, Lindy.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
Father God, we're so grateful to be here and grateful that you're here and grateful for another interaction, another learning process, another good time spent with each other and with you. There's so much to learn. It's never ending. It's mind-boggling how much there is to learn. And when we think we've got it all down pat, we serve up the next portion. So we're just grateful for this time that we spend exploring and discussing and ruminating and all the above. Thank you for the peace that we get, that we derive from the things we learned. And a lot of them keep us on the run for weeks at a time before we get the answer we're looking for, months at a time. But we are invested and willing to go on this journey, Lord. Thank you for steering the boat. We love you, Lord. It's in your precious name that we give our thanks. We pray and we say our amen. Amen and amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you.
Thank you,
See you
sir.
on Sunday.
Thanks, Dave.
Or another.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Bye, Jordana.
Bye. See you on
See you
Sunday.
Sunday, dear.
Bye.